Well, thanks everyone for joining me today. You have probably been following with great interest the story of Jim Karahalios and his second, basically getting kicked out of the Conservative Party of Canada for the second time. And we have Jim here today to explain everything that happened, what transpired in court, and where he's going to go from here. So Jim, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on again to discuss this important issue in Canadian democracy.
It is important, and I've been talking to some people really upset, and they say that if the CPC can do this to Jim Karahalios, they're not going to be part of the CPC anymore. And I see a trend happening in that way. I think that a few people were mad about what happened to Richard Dakari, what almost happened to Derek Sloan. Basically, it is looking like if you do not toe the party line, which is really the cabal at the top, that maybe you cannot be someone who runs for the leadership of this party.
And even more concerning was, in my case, we were in third place in terms of donations, support from signatures. When the disqualification came down, the threshold to get on the ballot was $300,000 in donations. They denied me the party lists of over 300,000 emails, which helped the other four candidates get to 300,000. I was supposed to get that list at 150,000. And despite not having that list of 300,000 emails, I was the third candidate to get to the 300,000. In polls that were taken by candidates and other sources showed that my support was increasing by every week. In some cases, it was doubling. So I was in third place when they removed me from the ballot. And we fought it. We went to court. We said it was a breach of contract. I paid $25,000 in accordance with Elections Canada to enter the race. People across the country donated hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to get me to the $300,000 threshold. So we went to court on the basis that that's a contract, the leadership rules, and we won. And the judge said the way they removed me from the ballot was not in accordance with the rules. It was a breach of the contract. It was 4 members of a small appeals committee led by Senator Don Plett, who decided to remove me from the ballot. Unfortunately, less than 24 hours after that court victory, which is the first time someone in Canada has held a political party in court accountable to their election rules, the leadership committee of 18 had a snap vote. We got the notice on last Wednesday in the morning from the court that we won, and less than 24 hours later on Thursday, they convened a meeting in the afternoon at 1 or 1:30, and the leadership committee of 18 decided to vote to remove me from the ballot a second time. The judge said that I had 14 days to pay this ridiculous $100,000 penalty and get on the ballot, but the party wouldn't have it. And so I was removed from the ballot twice, Laura-Lynn.
Yes, and I think that is just the growing interest in all of this is that you even went to court, like you fought it in court, and you've had a precedent-setting decision. Now, for those that are tuning in and they didn't know what originally happened, you questioned Sharia banking that was had been supported by Walid Solomon, who is the campaign chair of Aaron Otoole's campaign team at this time. And that is just very shocking. That remains a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, that in Canada, apparently questioning Sharia banking or, calling out somebody on all of that got you in so much trouble.
Right. So everyone that's followed my campaigns knows that I'm an aggressive campaigner. I just think that I campaign to win. When you campaign, you try to win, and you contrast yourself with the other candidates. And I sent the communication out first by mail that was out in circulation late February, and then an email on March 8th questioning some comments in the Globe and Mail by Aaron Otoole's campaign chair in support of Sharia banking. And also recapping the history that my family's had with Aaron Otoole's campaign chair when Mr. Solomon was running the Ontario PC party with Patrick Brown. And 2 days later, they came out with a complaint to the small cabal running the election, saying it was Islamophobic. How dare I questioned Sharia banking, and they said I was conflating Sharia banking with Sharia law, which is not the case. There was actually a court case in Ontario a year and a half ago where two individuals got off of fraud charges, and their defense were Sharia law principles on a mortgage case, Sharia mortgage case, and Tarek Fatah has written it in The Sun. The CBC covered that criminal case, multiple articles. So even the CBC covered this unprecedented decision that was made in Ontario court, freeing two men from fraud charges and their defense being Sharia law principles. But Laura-Lynn, I think the thing that I should make clear is that was the excuse that was used to remove me from the ballot, was this idea that I had an email that was Islamophobic, and the leadership committee convened a meeting and they voted to disqualify me based on that email, and it actually failed the first time. They didn't vote to disqualify me. Then the chief returning officer, Derek Vanstone, issued a $100,000 penalty against me that I had to raise in 8 days by the cutoff of March 25th to get in the race. So everyone else had to raise $300,000. Once I hit $300,000, Derek Vanstone said, no, Jim, you've got to raise $400,000 to get on the ballot. And I appealed it to this appeals committee, and this small appeals committee decided, you know what, we're just going to disqualify you. And the judge, when we won in court, the judge said, okay, the $100,000 fine stands, because the judge didn't have the legal authority to review the CRO's decision. The judge's authority in these types of contract cases is just to look at whether the contract's being followed. So he said the appeals committee didn't have the power under the contract to remove you, but I can't look at the CRO's judicial review of the fine. And so you have 14 days to pay the fine. And then I had double jeopardy on me, and the party went back and said, let's have another vote of the leadership committee a second time on Jim. And the second one, they voted out to remove me. I mean, they haven't even released the vote. But the Sharia banking email, Laura-Lynn, was the excuse. The reality is they were never going to let me get on the ballot. That's what I learned through the trial, talking to people within the party. It was very clear that they were never interested in letting me on the ballot. They thought I would never raise the $300,000. They thought I had no shot. We were in third place, and they panicked, and we were climbing in the polls in support across the country. Our average donations were higher than Erin O'Toole's. We were second highest in average donations after Peter McKay, and not with the downtown Toronto money that Peter McKay relies on. So our average donations were actually higher than Erin O'Toole's. So if we had the list of 300,000 emails that every other candidate had, you can imagine with that average donation, the kind of support we would have had across the country. We would have been raising more money than Erin Otoole and had more support than him at this point in the race.
So basically, it looks like you were a threat, and so they used anything that they could. Can you tell me how many people are actually on that LEOC committee?
So there's 18 people led by Lisa Raitt.
So she's the leader. Lisa Raitt is top of the LEOC?
Yeah, there's two of them that are co-chairs, and Lisa Raitt's the one that everyone knows, former member of parliament, and Andrew Scheer paraded her around as a star MP in the last election that we lost, and obviously, and she lost her own riding. You know, Lisa Raitt ran for leader in 2017 of the Conservatives, so she had her chance to make her mark in the party and move the Conservative Party in her downtown Toronto direction, and she got 3% in that leadership. And Lisa Raitt loves to go on TV and talk about big tent conservatism, and we're a big tent party. Well, Lisa Raitt's big tent fits about 3% of the party in it. That's Lisa Raitt's big tent. Somehow Lisa Raitt got the position of being the co-chair of the leadership committee, and that committee thinks that if they can't win in a leadership and shape the narrative or the principles of the party or the direction, they're going to do it by imposing fines and kicking candidates out of a race. That's how they're going to clamp down on this, on the direction of the party. And what it's going to do is it's going to fraction the conservative movement across the country. You're going to see more disenfranchised and upset conservatives from coast to coast. Some will go to the PPC, some will go to Wexit, others will stay home. And the prospects for a national conservative coalition to take on Justin Trudeau is not going to get better. I think it's going to get worse from here on out.
So when you look at those 18 people, you probably have studied a fair bit on who they are. Would you say that that group is largely the left-leaning part of the group now? Because we know that there is a fracture in the Conservative Party of Canada. We know that there is a battle going on between those who have traditional leanings and those who are progressives. And so Peter McKay and Erin Otoole, that is the red Tory side, no matter what Erin Otoole is trying to pretend that he's, that he's a social conservative. He's not. Nothing about him is social conservative. And neither is Lisa Raitt. But if you were to take that 18 member group of LEOC, the first time they did not disqualify you. So I'm guessing you had some supporters on that group. But the next time, do they have to take a vote again? So would they win by, like, if it's 18, so it could be 10-8 type of deal?
So there's no transparency on the vote, who voted which way. Even in court, the party didn't provide the evidence, and in a 1-month trial, our hands were kind of tied to force them to bring forward the evidence. So they didn't even give us the information as to how the vote went down the first time in that leadership committee, what was said about me. I've heard through back channels that there were other reasons why I was disqualified. I've heard through back channels that they were terrified that I could win because of the coverage I was getting, and because Peter and Erin are so weak, and especially if there were 3 blue Conservatives on the ballot with me, Derek, and Leslyn on a preferential ballot, there's a good chance that one of us could win. But they never disclosed any of that in court, Laura-Lynn. And even this second vote, the double jeopardy vote last Thursday, they just let out a statement saying the majority voted for your removal. The judge said under these rules, a leadership committee has broad powers to impose fines or disqualifications. And there was nothing he could do if they wanted to, quote, have a fresh set of eyes on my $100,000 penalty or my removal. Well, their fresh set of eyes, 50 pages of submissions, and I had lawyers working on my submissions to Erin O'Toole's complaint about me. Apparently, it took them 16 hours to look at all those documents and have a fresh set of eyes, and they removed me again. But there's no transparency. I have no idea how everyone voted, but I know that Dan Nolan, 2 days after my removal, went on CBC Power and Politics and did this disgraceful interview, basically saying it was my fault. He said, if I just paid the $100,000 penalty and I didn't appeal that decision by Derek Vanstone to fine me $100,000, I'd be on the ballot, he said. But, he got a softball interview from the CBC, and he didn't answer the question then, if they would have let me the first time get on the ballot paying the $100,000 penalty, why didn't they let me the second time when the judge said I had 14 days? Because the first time, they gave me 8 days to raise $100,000, and I couldn't do that. They knew that based on how much all the candidates were raising daily. But when the judge gave me 14 days, they decided, no, that was too much time, and they removed me. And so he went back out on the media with the CBC to malign me one more time. It wasn't good enough for them that they removed me one more time. They had to get the final say in. And of course, the CBC wouldn't have me on so they could hear the counter position. But no transparency. We have no idea how those 18 voted. And it's just all in a back room, no reasons issued. And they just said, you're out. And the $100,000 penalty from the CRO, I can tell you all about the flawed reasonings behind his fine that he issued on me. But the bottom line here is I met all the requirements to get on the ballot. I was in third place out of the 5, and a small group of 18 people, despite me winning in court, said, you're out of here.
Well, and you don't know that maybe it was a pretty close call, or there were some people really rooting for you. And this is the problem. Did you realize when you entered the race for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada, did you understand the schism that was there? And has that been made more sort of obvious through this process? Or did you not see it and you're surprised by all of this? I knew from Max Bernier's leadership in 2017 that there were questions on why there were more ballots than voters in the 2017 leadership. I knew from my own experience running in an Ontario PC convention where more ballots showed up than voters that there was an issue. And a lot of these characters are friends with each other and the same people.
but I never expected that they would remove me from the race. Like, I had concerns about how the mail-in ballot would work, but I never thought that they would remove me from the race.
But what about if that was true, and you understand that there has been so much questioning about the voting process, like maybe nobody can win except their designated person. At this point, no matter how good Derek Sloan is, and boy has he made some waves, boy has he stood up, like unbelievable. And for yourself, if you were on that ballot, it still would not say that you would win if indeed they're rigging all of these elections. They have never explained why there was, I think it was 7,466 votes too many that were cast in the Maxime Bernier leadership election. And so when these things are there, maybe you never had a chance anyways, Jim.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, when you come down to the vote, you still fight, and you get scrutineers, and you learn from prior experiences to make sure and have a lawyer ready to go if the vote goes sideways, to just throw it in front of a judge. So you keep fighting, but you're right. Like, when they remove you in the middle of the race, and they're doing things like, look, there's an RCMP investigation in Alberta from the Conservative Party of Alberta's leadership race that Jason Kenney won. I ran an Ontario PC convention where I crushed my opponent, and somehow 300 plus extra ballots showed up there were 1,000 delegates at that convention, and somehow he miraculously got half of his vote total were extra ballots that showed up in the boxes, and he squeezed out a fraudulent victory over me. You have Max's leadership against Andrew Scheer that was questionable, and now you have this. So it looks like in this scenario, they weren't taking any chances to try to do any funny business at the end with ballots. But to your point, I do agree. It begs the question, is this just like a wrestling skit where we're going to pretend that it's a real race and it's going to get rigged along the way, every which way, with a predetermined result? And it's certainly starting to look like that more and more.
Well, you know, you've got real people investing real dollars into their candidates. And if it's a joke, then it's a joke. And it's actually going to destroy the party. And this is the reason that Andrew Scheer, I'd like to ask you why you think that he wasn't able to beat Trudeau. Maybe you have a better reason than I do, but it has been stated that Andrew Scheer was not able to get it because, you know, he was too social conservative. He had too many old views. And quite frankly, on the outside looking in, with all of the network that I'm involved with, the reason he lost is he was not strong enough actually for values, for life. He was not strong enough. And I see this cabal, as you have called it, at the top, as doing extremely great damage to the party, in that they think they're the boss of everybody. They think that nobody is allowed to have a differing opinion from them. And if they do, they are control freaks. And so it's very sad that Derek Sloan, Leslyn Lewis, I'm not certain that there's going to be any kind of fairness. And it looks like they have coronated, I think was your word, either Aaron Otoole, Peter McKay. I think Aaron Otoole is probably the guy. Peter McKay is sort of the one that they kind of put up, and then, you know, but why do you think that Andrew Scheer did not do and take the leadership of this country?
Andrew Scheer's turned out to be pathetic in every way possible as a leader. From the moment he won the leadership all the way until through this leadership race, he's just pathetic. Like, I don't know how else to describe him, Laura-Lynn. For a man who was raised with such strong Catholic, Christian, conservative principles, it's just laughable watching him on the stage. And there's no better example of Andrew Scheer, and I'm going to give you two examples. When he held Trudeau to a minority in the last election, and he got more votes than Justin Trudeau, I was surprised how quickly he resigned as leader. And a few hacks in the Conservative Party across the country, led by Corey Tenike. There was Jeff Ballingall of Ontario Proud, that website or that Facebook page. There was another guy, Dave Parker, who said that they were going to ruin my life for questioning Walid Solomon. These guys got together and created this little mini campaign, Conservative Victory, getting Andrew Scheer to resign. And it was like a 2-week campaign. It was pathetic. It wasn't very strong. And Andrew just rolled over. He just rolled over and quit. Fine. I guess he saw the tea leaves and he wasn't going to survive a leadership vote because he threw all the conservatives, fiscal conservatives, social conservatives that supported him under the bus in his leadership. So he rolled over. Fine. We go in a leadership race, and those people that were behind getting rid of him are on Aaron O'Toole's campaign. And I'm the only guy in the leadership race defending Andrew from getting knifed in the back. And when it comes time for Aaron O'Toole's team to disqualify me, Andrew says nothing. He just says nothing. He's backing up the status quo and letting Aaron O'Toole go with it. And it turns out in this leadership race that Senator Don Plett, Lisa Raitt, Dan Nolan, and Derek Vanstone have more authority in our Conservative Party than Andrew Scheer does. Finally, when Derek Sloan got in some media heat for his comments questioning Theresa Tam's work, Andrew finally came out and he said, it's up to the members to decide what the comments are of a leadership candidate. He didn't say that in my case, only in Derek's case. And then 24 hours later, he backpedaled on that as well. So he's pathetic, Laura-Lynn. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. I've never seen a guy get knifed in the back from operatives in his own party and watch them go into other leadership campaigns and no self-respect, doesn't stand up for himself. And the only guy in the race, which was me, that was standing up for him, he says nothing when I get railroaded by Aaron O'Toole's team and the LEOC.
Do you think that it has something to do with this whole issue of Islam and Sharia? These are tough questions, but this is a grave concern to many of the Conservative Party members. You see, it is not that we do not respect other religious views and perspectives in our nation, but for the most part, Canadians do not want Sharia anything. They don't want Sharia banking, and they don't want a Sharia hair salon. They don't want nothing Sharia in Canada.
So the question of the inclusion of Sharia law in different areas of our legal system started back in the early 2000s with Dalton McGuinty, when there was a pressure there to allow Sharia law in marital tribunals in Ontario. And he was a Liberal Premier of Ontario, and he actually said there will be no Sharia law in Ontario. So when I came across this Ontario court decision a year and a half ago, where 2 individuals were charged with fraud on a mortgage business they had, where $2 million went missing when they were in bankruptcy, and the judge let them off the fraud charges because of principles of Sharia law, I thought, that's not what we stand for in Canada. And it's definitely not what the Conservative Party stands for. In the policy book of the party, it says that we are not for religious or cultural courts or tribunals, and there'll be one law for all. So it's a really unifying issue for conservatives within the party, conservatives outside the party. And when we talk about swing votes, Laura-Lynn, or you know, the elites at the top of the Conservative Party that keep losing elections and they talk about swing voters, well, there's no better swing issue than, are we allowing a Sharia law to be made as a defense in criminal cases in Canada or not? I think the overwhelming consensus on this is most Canadians would be against that. I didn't attack Walid Solomon. And Dan Nolan, the leadership chair, went on the CBC and he said, well, it's Mr. Karahalios' fault if he didn't criticize Aaron O'Toole's chair. I didn't know Walid Solomon was untouchable in the Conservative Party. Look, it's not that, Laura-Lynn. They were going to remove me for one thing or another. And they picked that one because they thought the allegation of Islamophobia and bigot would stick. And it didn't stick, because when news started coming out that I had been removed the first time, people were outraged. People that didn't even want to vote for me, even red Tories, were outraged, Laura-Lynn. And I've had emails from people that don't agree with everything I say, like getting out of the Paris Accord. They were outraged. And what it comes down to is not so much right and left, it's top and bottom. There's a cabal at the top that want to control the party and control the candidates and want them scripted at every time. And if you're a candidate who's not controlled by the cabal and who's just talking in your communications based on what you believe in and you can win, it really, really scares them.
So you're giving then, a perspective on that. What about the money that comes in? It seems that there's a lot of money that will come into a party from certain factions, and that maybe that has begun to control where they will put their perspective.
I don't have any evidence of that, because we have the donor limits in Canada where each person can only donate a max of $1,600. I mean, whenever you get someone who can do a fundraiser, they wield some influence.
But how about for the amount of people then brought to, like if you're supportive of Walid Solomon, my understanding is his network into the Islamic community would be substantial, so they don't want to mess with that. Would that be a possible problem?
I don't think it's that. I think Walid is a chair of a Bay Street law firm that's international. I think he's got a lot of connections on Bay Street. I think he views himself as an important person in the financial world. And, when Lisa Raitt talks about a Big Tent party, she means south of Bloor Street off of Yonge. That's what she means, a Big Tent party. So they can go downtown Toronto to the cocktail circuit, and they meet each other. All the lawyers and the lobbyists get together, and they talk about what a great Big Tent party they have, and everyone thinks like them. And I honestly believe that they think that Andrew Scheer lost because he was too conservative.
Yes.
And they believe that we can't win as a conservative party and with a conservative leader. And people like Senator Don Plett, who used to be reformers, who were with Preston Manning when the Reform Party came up, they're the new Red Tories. And they might not like it. And Don Plett was running around sending emails to everybody complaining that I was calling it a Red Tory coronation. And people on the leadership committee in my interview with them were saying, how dare you, I want you to know, Jim, you're saying this is a Red Tory coronation. I'm blue as anything. I wouldn't allow a Red Tory coronation. Well, when push comes to shove, they don't believe that a blue conservative can win. And they've bought into the media hype, and they believe what the lobbyists are telling them, that we need a centrist party. And they're going down that road with Aaron Otoole and Peter McKay, and they're going to get crushed. And as Aaron Otoole would say it, it's going to be electoral obliteration when they go down that road of having a centrist party and they drive out conservatives out of the Conservative Party of Canada.
I think that is what it's feeling like. And so some of these people that have taken the reins at the top, and it continues to be people like Lisa Raitt, was just so shocking because she couldn't maintain her seat. A lot of people that value deep conservative roots and those traditional values do not like her, nor do they stand for the likes of Michelle Rempel. And yet this party, if in fact they are willing to compromise the integrity of the process, those are the people that are going to be in control. And so it's a great problem.
Well, these people are not well. Like there's something wrong with them in their head. Like they take my donation money of $25,000. They have me running around for 5 or 6 weeks. I had a great campaign going. We raised $300,000, and they come out with this $100,000 penalty because I wrote an email. And they justify it on, you're breaching the Constitution, the principles of our party's Constitution, ignoring the policy declaration that shows that actually what I'm saying is what party members agree with and have voted on at conventions. Then they apply this volunteer code of conduct. You should really look at it, Laura-Lynn. They've come up with this volunteer code of conduct that doesn't apply to party members, doesn't apply to leadership candidates, but you basically can't say anything if you're a volunteer on a conservative campaign. They in error, they apply that to me, and they come up with this $100,000 penalty, and then that wasn't good enough for them. They disqualify me, and then when the judge says give them 14 days to pay it, they disqualify me again. And then Dan Nolan goes on TV to say it was my fault if I just paid the $100,000 penalty. He never asked the question, what was the penalty for? I was putting out a political position that was in line with Conservative Party members, and these people are not well. They're like, there's something wrong with them, that they believe that the way to run an election in a party is to hand down fines and penalties and waste people's time and money to get excited about a leadership, and they don't care if they are destroying the party or fragmenting the party with conservatives that are upset and disillusioned. They don't care. And it begs the question, do they actually want conservatives to beat Trudeau? Or is life in whatever business they're doing outside of politics, is life really good that they actually don't want a real conservative to win and clean up government? That's the real question for me, because I think there's a fifth element or a fifth column in the Conservative Party of Canada that's sabotaging, either consciously or subconsciously, our prospects going forward.
I do too, Jim, and I was flagged on the volunteer code of conduct. Now, you just kind of threw that in, and we passed that, and it could almost go unnoticed. But the volunteer code of conduct was basically telling everyone how to think, and if not how to think, then at least that they do not express their personal views if they want to volunteer for the Conservative Party of Canada. So what kind of party is that? Like, what is that?
They came up with that right before the last general election because they were concerned with, the National Council was worried about rowdy volunteers. Most campaigns that I've been in, it's hard to get volunteers. You're not really concerned with their behavior or what they're saying because you'll take anybody. And they passed this volunteer code of conduct that's just for volunteers because they can't impose that on party members because that's got to go to convention. And the Ontario PC Party, the Ontario Conservative Party, is trying to do the exact same thing as that code of conduct, but actually apply it to all members so they can probably, Doug Ford's party, so they can kick people like me out. And my wife actually spoke out against it. But in this scenario, they said, I violated this code of conduct that doesn't even apply to members or the leadership contestants. So basically what they're doing is they're trying to drive people out of the party that don't toe the party line. And the party line for this Conservative Party is losing. That's the party line. That's the 3% tent that Lisa Raitt wants. That's Senator Don Plett in charge of a leadership committee with Lisa Raitt. That's Derek Vanstone's vision. And that's why we've got Erin O'Toole and Peter McKay as quote unquote front runners in a race because they're losers. And that's what we're heading for in the next election with these guys as the front runners in a Conservative leadership race.
Have you been surprised at the amount of what would be considered traditional blue Tory members that are now supporting Erin O'Toole or Peter McKay, and have the MPs that have come forward and said, okay, I'm putting my support around this one? And basically it hasn't really been for the social conservative candidates.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, there's a bubble in Ottawa. So a lot of these MPs that have been there for a few years, they lose touch. And look, a lot of these MPs are not very good at campaigning. They got there, maybe they rode the coattails of Stephen Harper. They got there because Andrew was able to pick up seats out west, for example, because Trudeau was a disaster in the last election campaign. So when they hear the hype of Peter McKay is the front runner in the media, they jump on. And I'm shocked that some of them that are good, strong conservatives are on Peter's team. Or, then they later hear that Erin O'Toole has, the elite lobbyists and strategists on his team, so they might jump on there. And the endorsement game never really works, Laura-Lynn, in these conservative leaderships. The person with the most endorsements typically a lot of times doesn't win, especially if you're like some kind of an establishment candidate. And, they're just playing it safe for themselves because these MPs are concerned that if they endorse the wrong candidate and one of Peter or Erin becomes the leader, what does that hold for them in that caucus going forward? And look, the other side of it is, can you blame them? I mean, when you see what they've done to me just because I criticized Erin O'Toole in an email, and they kicked me right out of the leadership, an MP with less profile across the country will be nervous, will be scared about, if I endorse the wrong person in this race or say the wrong thing, will they kick me out of caucus? Will they come after me next?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And really that all comes down to how difficult politics is, because at the end of the day, it ends up being not about your values, not about your beliefs, but actually simply about how to win. And that's the problem.
Well, the irony there, or the paradox there, is that they think they're winning when Senator Don Plett runs around telling people, I'm a blue Tory and I'm a Christian, but we can't win like that. They think they're winning. And what's going to happen is they're going to lose and they're going to get crushed. And it's going to be like Brian Mulroney, Kim Campbell all over again. Hopefully not that bad, although it depends where you're sitting. Hopefully not that bad when I say. But they are dividing the Conservative coalition. I ran in this race because I wanted to bring together, you know, disgruntled Conservatives. I wanted to bring PPC people back. I wanted to bring, quell the Wexit, the rise of the Wexit party and that movement. And I wanted to show that we can unite all these factions of conservatism across the country. And these guys like Don Plett, like Lisa Raitt, like Dan Nolan, like Derek Vanstone, like Aaron Otoole, they don't care. They don't care. As long as they can have their little party in opposition and control it, they don't care what factions of conservatives there are across the country, what division there is. They honestly don't care, because the most important thing to them is control and being in charge, and winning comes later. It's almost like they'll take the win out of a fluke.
Right. Well, it's going to be very interesting the day that the ballots are cast and we have the final on who has actually taken this leadership and what the outfall from, because I think that's going to be a very, very telling day. I think a lot of people have reinvested. They've gotten their memberships because they're hoping that their vote can count for the right candidate, not for political reasons, but because they truly believe that this person is going to make a difference. And then if there is anything that looks funny, if there is, you know, any kind of fraudulent vote practices, or, you know, their candidate doesn't get in and it's either Aaron Otoole or Peter McKay, I think there's going to be yet another problem coming up for the Conservatives.
Well, it's going to be really hard for Derek or Laura-Lynn to win, because if you run in a race to win, you've got to criticize the front runners, and it doesn't seem like they're willing to do that. And I don't blame them, because after they saw what happened to me, there's probably a bit of a chill. So I'm grateful that they both said I should be in the race and stood up and sent an email out. But if you're not willing to criticize the front runners, there's really no path to victory, especially when you're new and you're not well known, and everyone knows Peter McKay and the members kind of know Aaron Otoole, kind of. For Derek and Laura-Lynn, who are less well known, they're going to have to criticize the front runners to break into that lead, or they're just going to be in the race to support one of the other two on a preferential ballot. So, and when it gets close, if it gets close, Laura-Lynn, you're absolutely right. Like, look out for the numbers, look out for the totals, and let's hope that everyone has good scrutineers in there and they report back what's going on, because I wouldn't put anything past these guys running this leadership race.
Well, interestingly, Aaron Otoole and Peter McKay are kind of at each other's throats. You do see that going on, and it's pretty hysterical. Yeah, I mean, not too long ago, Peter McKay was criticizing Aaron Otoole for what he called the bathroom bill. And I mean, when I saw that night, after everything I've been through in standing against Bill C-16, you know, which is the transgender, you know, bathroom bill, as he's called it, I knew he was going to be in so much trouble. And then the next day, he's backtracking on that. Then, after he criticizes Aaron Otoole that he is totally supportive of Bill 16, which is just one step away from compelled speech and all of this, then they backtrack, and his campaign team says, well, he's learned a lot since those days. He would definitely be in support of the bill, you know, C-16 at this point. I mean, nothing made sense. It was ridiculous, and you could see they're all like, they're treading water, trying to, you know, keep ahead of the game. It's just pretty funny.
Nothing that Aaron Otoole and Peter McKay has made much sense in this race. And you bring up a good point. Like, Peter McKay used the term bathroom bill on C-16 when he could have just said, I'm against C-16, but that's fine. He used that term. It blew up in the media. He got attacked. No fine or penalty levied against Peter McKay. Aaron Otoole sent out an email 2 days after he lodged a complaint about me. And in his email, he said, I'm going to fight Sharia law because it's a threat to Canadian values and Canadian democracy. He didn't say anything about Sharia banking, ironically, or not surprisingly, but actually. And no sanction on Aaron Otoole for using more inflammatory language, criticizing Sharia law. All I said was I disagree with statements from his campaign chair. then Derek Sloan, had media attacking him for criticizing Theresa Tam. None of them had a penalty, a fine assessed against them, let alone disqualified. And then somehow I was just kicked right out of the race for one email and I only had like, a couple media articles about my email were out there. So it goes to show you that the rules are not being applied fairly, especially not to Erin O'Toole and Peter McKay. And there's something funny going on with the motivations of the leadership committee in this race. And I was a threat in third place. So I don't know how it's all going to unfold, but things are not looking good for the Conservative movement going forward.
Well, it's not looking good because, once again, the grassroots is not happy about what's going on. And I think that they are, at this time, they're just like, they're biding their time, and they're going to make their vote count for the election night. But after that, we'll see what happens. If you were running the country then at this time, have you been watching? Have you even had time? I know that you've been in court a lot, but can you believe what is going on in our nation? This is for Canada, and I know you love Canada. We're really facing some dire things because of what the Liberals are doing to our nation, using the COVID-19 as a ruse almost.
And I kind of, I was buried in court for 2 months, and when I would have rather have been campaigning and talking about the issues that Canadians were most concerned with. But while we're in court, it kind of felt like my court case was a microcosm of what's going on across the country. Like, I was getting kicked out of a leadership race, and the thousands of people that donated to my campaign were being told who they can vote for, and the message was being controlled. And at the same time, you're watching governments at the federal and provincial level, and even Conservative governments at the provincial level, that are basically just shadow stepping Justin Trudeau and doing exactly what he's doing on COVID. And they're shutting down small businesses. They're using really offensive language to criticize people who, decide to go to a park or decide to go visit relatives. And here's the best part, though, Laura-Lynn. They're not even following the same rules that they're applying to everyone else. Just like this leadership race, where the leadership committee couldn't even follow their own rules when they kicked me out. So I think the common theme here is control. We have politicians and important people in positions across the country, provincially and federally, and they just want to be in control all the time, and they'll use any excuse. The answer always seems to be to every problem is more control. And it's concerning, and that's one of the reasons why I was running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. And I do think, though, that on the back end of this, I just keep sensing and feeling, people that I talk to, people that are emailing me, that people aren't happy. And it's not just Conservatives. It's across the political stripe line, political aisle. People are not happy with every solution to every problem is more control on the masses. And we'll see where it goes. But the first thing we need is a Conservative coalition to defeat Justin Trudeau.
And I'm not sure if you want to comment on this at all, but it has been interesting to watch Stephen Harper leaving. He had a position, financial, like governing the finances of the party, and then he just left that. And we're all kind of watching. Sometimes we're just left guessing what's actually going on.
I don't have any inside information, but it seems, just objectively looking at it, when Andrew Scheer was being attacked to quit, and he rolled over and he let the people that stabbed him in the back get the front runners in this race, and he's just been pathetic. I think Stephen Harper saw the writing on the wall in terms of the people controlling Erin O'Toole and Peter McKay, and he just decided to take a quick exit. And I've read some of those articles online from independent left-wing sources that suggest that Stephen Harper is behind Erin O'Toole, and I don't buy it. I think that people like Senator Plett, who are on the leadership committee, if you ask him and you press him, and he runs around telling everyone he's not a red Tory, and we all know Peter McKay is a red Tory, Senator Plett probably wouldn't mind if Peter McKay loses the leadership. But I think others that came up through the party for 20 years under Stephen Harper are using his name as cover that they want Erin O'Toole to win. But I don't have any indication that, you know, if you're Stephen Harper and you wanted to be involved in the party and have your way, you'd stay on the fund. You wouldn't quit, and you'd come out and you'd be endorsing someone. You wouldn't be doing it through people that used to work for you 10 years ago. Look, the media used to criticize Stephen Harper for controlling his staff and being on top of every issue that his government was doing. And, you know, when I was younger, 25, and I had more hair, I sometimes bought into some of that. Oh, come on, Prime Minister, why don't you let some of your staff have more influence, or let some of your cabinet or MPs have more influence? Well, when I'm watching Lisa Raitt, Dan Nolan, and Derek Vanstone run this leadership like a kangaroo court, now I know why Stephen Harper actually wanted to have his thumb on everything in the party, because some of the incompetence that we're seeing in this leadership race, it's breathtaking.
Well, in closing, Jim, you know, it's actually just fascinating to talk to you. I think that you have such a much better sense of what's actually going on than anybody in there. And the irony is you're on the outside. Is it true then that you are supposed to be getting your money back?
Oh, thank you for reminding me about that. So one of the things that wasn't covered in this court case very much is when they removed me from the ballot, Laura-Lynn, I had over $100,000 in campaign expenses. And they cut off my, the first time they cut me out of the ballot and they cut me off of the donor portal online, they actually threatened, their position was they weren't going to give me any of the donor money. So I was not only forced to go to court to fight for the ballot, but I also had to go to court to clarify the rules. And fortunately, we won the court case not only on the disqualification being illegal, but also the judge told them, like, you can't hold the donor money. So they do have a court judgment saying they have to transfer the donor money within 20 days to my campaign so I can pay my expenses. And it's really important because, you know, the Election Act, Laura-Lynn, I can't pay those out of my own pocket, and I can't find 4 wealthy people to cut $25,000 checks and pay them, because we have finance laws in Canada and everyone has a max of $1,600. And without access to that money on a campaign that's over, I don't think it'd be really hard to raise that again. And I don't want to be subject to Elections Canada coming after me for jail time or fines. But I thought it was extra malicious that they wanted to remove me from the ballot and humiliate me, and then keep all the money or refund it to all the donors and not give me any of it, and actually put me at odds with my own donors to force me to go back and ask them for a second time for help for a campaign that was over. The correct thing would have been to let me run, because people donated their money not for a campaign that was going to last 2 months, for a campaign that was going to make it to the ballot. And they've screwed it all up, and they wanted to come after me by holding the money, but luckily the court clarified that, so we should be getting the money unless they want to defy a court order. Well, they disqualified me a second time, so who knows what they're going to do.
I think that you've gotten yourself in this trouble because you're highly unusual, Jim. I find you to be an extraordinary person. I see Erin O'Toole and Peter McKay, they're just trying to toe a line that they think will win, and you're trying to bring in all of your being and your soul to this, and you have a way of saying certain things that is so, well, some of it's politically incorrect, and we have a problem with that. That is a real virus in our nation. It's worse than COVID. It's this political correctness where you cannot speak your mind. And I have seen that strength arising out of Derek Sloan, where he is going against the establishment, even refusing to apologize the way in which they demanded an apology. This is not the Conservative Party that we knew. And, you know, Jim, I honor your strength and your powerful approach to politics. It's unusual. It's a very unusual in Canada. And I think that's why people liked you. And I think you would have given them an excellent run for their money, if not taken the leadership. And that's why you're out. And so I hope that you'll keep fighting. I don't know what that will look like.
Well, we'll see. We're going to take some time now with my family My wife, she's an MPP in Ontario. We have a 4-year-old Victor. We're going to take some time, wind down the campaign, and see what's next. So I have no idea what's next. We'll see. Obviously, I was disappointed, but I'm very thankful for all the support we got across the country, and the donors and the signatures for endorsement signatures, and people calling party headquarters. And I just want to thank them and thank you for having me on the show twice now, and thank all the conservatives across the country for their support, and others who are not conservatives that signed up because they wanted to fix the political system. And I'm sorry that it didn't work out and we weren't able to get a total victory in court where the judge would have stepped in and basically ran the race. I'm sorry that that was the result. I hope people don't feel like I wasted their time with donations and signatures. We did our best, and there is a thirst, though, for fixing this political system in Canada, and people want to have their say, and people want their votes to matter. And so I don't know what the future holds, but I'm very grateful for all the people I've met in this campaign, and people like you, Laura-Lynn, and others, and the friends we've made across the country, and thank you very much for all the support.